Seeing as the time is 6:00 p.m., I call the Lisle Library District Personnel Policy Committee meeting for November 6, 2019 to order. Roll call, please.
Lisle.
Here.
Tom Duffy.
Here.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Here.
Thomas Hummel.
Here.
Tatiana Weinstein.
Here.
Beth McCollum.
Here. Okay. Number 2 on the agenda is opportunity for visitors to speak. Seeing as there are none, we will move on to number 3. Approve minutes of the August 26, 2019 Personnel Policy Committee meeting. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to approve minutes of the August 26, 2019 Personal Policy Committee meeting.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions, comments? Marjorie?
No.
No?
I'm sorry.
Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Tom Duffy.
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Aye.
Lisle.
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is LLD Policy 635, Posting and Distribution of Materials, Discussion/Draft. And that kind of is combined with item 5, which is LLD Policy 640, Signs, Discussion/Draft. So I'm going to turn it over to the director.
Okay, so agenda items 4 and 5, we can do in tandem. Both current policies, 635 and 640, are provided in the packet, and they're on one page just to make it convenient for reading. And neither of these policies have been updated since 2002, and they both reference the posting of materials or signs in and around the building. And one discusses solicitation of funds, which has nothing to do with the actual title of that policy. And actually that topic is handled in another policy, so that's taken care of. And 640 reiterates a lot of what's in 635. So basically there's some redundancy here and a few things missing. So what I wanted to add is the addition of intergovernmental agency signs, and we talked about this at a former meeting. I also polled our intergovernmental friends at our last meeting and asked if there was unanimous agreement to have a reciprocal relationship in terms of posting signs on each other's property, and there was. So that was added to the new policy 635, and you have a copy of that in the packet with a lot of strikeouts and some red text, and then you also have a clean copy. So we can walk through Policy 635 with a new title called Signs and Displaying Promotional Literature and Materials. And then we can go from there. I broke it down to an A, B, and C. A being our community board, which it's a community board on our first floor of the library. We post a lot of educational, civic posters, and then B is the intergovernmental and LLD affiliate group sign section, and then C is the special exhibits. So we can walk through this together. Let's see here.
The clean copy's on page 7.
I see it. Okay. I don't want to read the whole thing to everybody. I don't think that's a good use of our time. But there's an introduction to why we are committed to promoting our program services and resources. And this encompasses not only posters, but signs and flyers and brochures. Our community board talks about, again, the not-for-profit, philanthropic, or civic posters that we put on the community board downstairs. It also stipulates that groups who meet in this room cannot advertise on that board. And then when you move to the intergovernmental, it does lay out our relationships with the other governing bodies, as well as some other organizations in town, such as the Lisle Women's Club and the Friends of the Lisle Library District. And this talks about permitting signs on our property, and it provides some limitations there. Those being that they have to be authorized by the director or designee, also displayed under the guidance of the director or the designee, allowing for modest in size and quantity. We don't want billboards on our property, and making sure they're in good condition, not dilapidated, and then making sure that they're collected within a timely manner. And then special exhibits refers to when we group with, we partner with an outside agency. So I think in March, we're partnering with a group called Scarce. They're an environmental group, and we're gonna have a recycling exhibit or a display, and I think it's either an A-frame display or a cube that we'll have on our adult services floor. So we wanna allow for those kind of things as long as they're authorized by the Lisle Library District. So, any comments or suggestions on this?
So are we pretty, except, so we're mostly restricted to either the intergovernmental or the two ones we have a historic relationship with, but there might be some exceptions with your permission then, like Scarce, for example, like you just said?
Well, under special exhibits, it talks
Okay.
about that allowance.
Okay.
And you never know, another organization can spring up that either it's affiliated with the library or another.
So basically, it's gonna just be
branch.
these, the intergovernmentals and the two. And then, as far as like, I think it's this policy, right, is the one with the materials, in the facility, the billboard outside here, the front door, that's just for our meeting agendas and stuff?
That's library, yes.
Okay.
And it's, that, I think that's covered under civic,
Okay,
so.
gotcha.
Any other?
So the newsletter is only for staff programs? We don't advertise, say, and then we retain an individual to run a program that's considered staff? I mean,
Yes, library, library-sponsored
Sponsored.
programming. We do, though, on the back page, and this is not in writing anywhere, but we do promote Friends programs, or we'll promote the book sale on the very back side of the newsletter.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I had a question. It was going back to President Hummel's question around the historic. Is it just, when I read that, the qualifier of historic connections, I almost said, well, can it just be any community organizations, such as like the Lions Club or Kiwanis or Rotary? Like, we don't necessarily maybe have the strongest historic connection that we do with those other organizations, but I think we would be fine with them. They would fall kind of into that kind of bucket or some sort. So I think that would be, the qualifier of historic maybe kind of threw me off a little bit as I read that
That's fine. We
section.
can change the word. What does everybody else think about, like, Kiwanis
I-
or?
Well, I can't, I gotta be careful because I'm in the Kiwanis, but I
Yeah.
guess I kind of thought of that too, actually, but I mean, I'm not opposed, but I guess the issue I could see happening is, then where does it end? I mean, I know Kiwanis, Lions Club, Rotary Club, I guess Chamber of Commerce, things like that.
Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts.
Boy Scout, Knights of Columbus, I think there's one in Lisle too. They, I mean, you could say, okay, those are established, I guess, but then what's next?
No, I agree. That was kind of when I struggled with it.
I mean,
You don't have to say
I'm okay.
historic connection, we could just say connections,
Yeah,
or
right.
if, I don't know.
Well, and I was reading it as, just because of the fact that, okay, the Lisle Women's Club is who founded the Lisle
Yeah.
Library District, so
Yeah.
there's that. And then the Friends of the Lisle Public Library District, they benefit us directly.
Correct.
So they're that kind of
Yeah.
tie with it, in addition to the other governmental
Yeah.
agencies. And then I kind of feel like what you were saying, Trustee Duffy, would tie in more with like the special exhibits, if there was something specific that they wanted to do. You know, sometimes we have like the thing to collect scarves and stuff
Yeah.
out here in the
That's
foyer, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
As opposed to these, for the B, to me, that's the stuff that's like on the property where they put like the stakes in and
Yes.
they advertise that kind of
Yes.
stuff, right?
Yeah, because you
Or
like,
no?
like
Am I
you like.
reading it wrong?
No,
Okay.
I mean, it's whatever we want it to be.
Okay, okay.
No, like, because the Kiwanis, like, I think we've been allowed to put like the downtown Lisle car show poster downstairs, I believe, or no?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
See.
yes.
And that's a different, that's on the community board, right?
Yes.
So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
different, so
That's
that's
covered.
under A.
Yeah, so you could, so folks like that, and I think, like you're saying, I know who's doing the scarves for veterans right
That's
now?
Lisle
She just said it was
Club.
Lisle
Okay, 'cause I know
Club.
there's, everybody does stuff like that, so they're doing that. I know the Kiwanis had was it a food drive we did? Like a box for, wasn't it
I don't-
last year or 2 years ago?
Was it Kiwanis?
We had
Here?
something.
I don't know. I don't think we did it
I
here.
can't remember.
We did have a food.
We had something.
Food bin, we did
I
have.
know
a
that we have
bin.
food bins, and then, but I guess, so there's other ways you can promote within, but you're talking about signs outside,
Like
right?
yard signs,
Yeah, I probably-
banners, that's.
But I see,
Yeah.
that I actually then agree with the lange in that, as we
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
talked,
Yeah.
I understand the
Yeah.
qualifier,
Yeah.
I think initially, but
Do
yeah.
we want to keep historic or just connections? Do we want historic? Do you want, I mean, anything can be changed. It's whatever you want it to be.
It doesn't matter, I mean, it's fine, historic, if you want to take historic out, it's not.
I'm okay with historic just because then it reminds us
Yep.
of
Why?
Lisle Women's Club
Yeah, why?
being our founding,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, our founders.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Historic, I like it, keeping that.
Yep.
I did have one question at the very beginning, in the first, via digital display, I just was wondering, what is the digital display? Is
The-
it just that out there?
TV.
TV or?
Yeah.
That's what I figured. I
Oh,
just wanted-
also, on Route 53, there's the Lisle,
Okay,
sign,
yeah,
the
that
digital
one, the
sign.
digital sign.
I was just trying to cover like, how else can we, how do you cover other means of advertising?
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. No, that, I was just more curious, that's all.
And who knows, maybe down the road, we will have some type of digital display outside.
No, yeah, and that's,
I mean, who knows, right? So
Yeah.
then we wouldn't have to edit the policy.
That's
Right
true,
in there.
you're right, yeah.
As far as historical connections, would we mention the Heritage Society?
We could.
I don't want anyone to feel left out.
I know, I
Although-
said such as, so I
Right.
mean, we could if you.
Yeah.
It's not a
like.
major issue,
But
but it-
there's a Heritage Society, I know. I mean, no, it's fine, I mean, it's probably.
Depot Days,
we-
isn't that Heritage Society?
No, it's Heritage
It is.
Society, yeah.
It is.
I mean, if you want to add that
just a
one, or-
question,
or-
I mean,
yeah.
Is that something in the past that we've advertised on our property, I guess is the question.
Some of these we have, some of these we have not because we haven't allowed for it
Right.
within our policy. So, in this language here, we could add Lisle Heritage such as the Friends and.
maybe the term historic connections, just changing it to, because in the title it says affiliated. Affiliated is a different qualifier than historic connections. Lisle Women's Club and the Friends of the Library are affiliated with us in some type of unique relationship where everything else isn't. So just saying within the community as well as affiliated independent organizations such
Okay.
as the Lisle Women's Club and Friends of Lisle.
So then getting rid of the historic connections piece?
Yeah.
So Lisle has strong relations with other governmental agencies within the community as well as affiliated organizations such as the Lisle Women's Club and Friends of the Lisle Library District. But where did the Heritage Society go? Are we adding or not adding?
No,
No?
I would hold
No.
that.
No.
But can you reread that once you?
Okay, so the LLD has strong relationships with other governmental agencies within the community as well as affiliated organizations such as the Lisle Women's Club and Friends of the Lisle Public Library District.
That's fine.
We need some comments in there.
Okay. I know.
Let's make it as a run-on as possible.
Need some comments.
Yeah.
Says it. Okay, so are we good with that? Any other comments on this? Or can we make a recommendation to send it to the board meeting that's next Wednesday?
Yep.
Do we need to do a roll call vote for that, or can that be a voice vote?
Just direction, we don't have to do a motion or even all that.
You can just
Okay.
provide
Just
direction.
All right.
Everybody
Everyone is in
agrees to that?
agreement? Okay,
Yes.
then I recommend we move this to the agenda
Okay.
for November 13th, full board meeting.
All right. Great.
Woo-hoo! One down.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, then, next item on the agenda is LLD Policy 610, Patron Code of Conduct Discussion / Draft.
And we did so we approved
6:30 and 6:45
Are both. so
are
two.
combined.
Gotcha.
6:35 and 6:40.
I'm sorry, 6:35 and 6:40 are combined to the new 6:35.
Gotcha.
There's
Okay.
no more 6:40 anymore,
That's
and it's
right.
all in one policy.
Gotcha.
Next week.
Right, sorry. Currently, there still is, but once we take it to the board meeting and hopefully everyone approves it at our next board
Sure.
meeting, then there would be no more 640. Okay, 610.
Okay,
Okay.
610. This is our patron code of conduct, and it contains some edits and additions, just very minor ones. Under item number 4, there's just some clarification regarding containers. I just wanted to know if everyone agreed with that. I think when I reread everything just to see if we could tighten some things up. When you talk about beverages must be in closed containers, I don't know, some people may interpret that in one way or another, but what we're really looking for is a lid on your container, so that was changed. Under number 5, we've updated the alcohol section to include cannabis and also any inebriated behavior. So then this, I'm going to read it out since it's not that long. So the possession or consumption of alcoholic beverages while on LLD property is prohibited, as is entering the library in a state of intoxication. Consumption of cannabis products while on LLD property is prohibited, as is entering the library while under the apparent influence of such products. Any inebriated behavior, whether via legal, prescriptive, or illegal means, may prompt a call to the appropriate local authority and/or agency. Does that sound okay? So we looked into the Denver Public Library's website regarding their policies. We looked at a couple of others that are allowing the legal use of cannabis. So we pulled from there, and that's how we came up with this. We don't have to tackle this now if you don't want to. We just thought it was
No, it's probably
It's
good.
time.
It's probably good because it's going to come up, I mean, the law officially changes January 1, correct?
Yep, right.
So, I mean, it's, yeah, you know, it's probably good to have. I mean, if the law changes further down the road, I mean, then we could revisit it in a
Right.
future year, but I think it's good to have it on the books.
Good to be proactive.
So the one thing I struggle with this, what if I was on it through medical reasons?
okay.
Because it
That's what
says-
we discussed. I mean,
Yeah,
staff
yeah,
were talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah, like that's the only, because it says, now you say you can't consume it here. That makes
Exactly.
complete sense.
Yeah.
But as is entering the library under apparent influence in such products. Now, I think what you're probably getting at is apparent influence is different than medicinal, but maybe not. That's the one where I struggle of, is it, we're looking for, I guess I put it, symptoms that are towards an inebriated behavior. But, you know,
How do you say it? Yeah.
I know, and that's, I don't
Well,
know
I think
how
it's
to
just,
handle it.
you're talking about the behavior. I mean, if, whether it's somebody's drunk or pilled up or medicinal marijuana, because it does say, if you, I guess if you probably take it like you may be over-medicated by whatever means, and that's where I think probably any inebriated behavior, whether via legal, and I think the whether via legal, so I know what you're saying as far as that goes, and then prescriptive, or, which is also medicinal, or illegal means, which isn't, and then may prompt a call up to appropriate local authorities. And I'm gonna assume you're not calling the authorities the first thing. I mean, would the staff first ask the patron to leave if they appear intoxicated or inebriated?
Well,
or
if we see a behavioral issue, we approach the
Okay,
person and
first.
then we make a
Then-
judgment call.
okay, gotcha.
But to your point, maybe we remove that as is entering the library while under the apparent influence of such products. Maybe just as, it's a period after consumption of cannabis products while on LLD property is prohibited, period. Any inebriated behavior. Is that more palatable?
Yes, I agree.
think so.
I think like that is, and that's a struggle, right? Like if someone's on it and
Yeah.
it's, I mean, and they're not inebriated, but they have clearly consumed it, and,
Yeah.
you know, what do you
Right.
do in that situation?
Well, again, I mean, there's no perfect
Yeah.
answer for these situations and any kind of behavioral issue. So if we see anything that's out of the ordinary, and I know that's a very gray statement, we
Yeah.
generally will approach the patron if it's a safe situation. If not, we will call somebody.
And probably, it would be more, if there's an issue, it would probably be more alcohol related or alcohol-related or other, either prescription pills or other drugs. I mean, it could still be marijuana, could cause a problem, I suppose, but I would guess it would probably be less likely. I don't know. I'm
Right.
just, I'm just,
Who knows?
there's a lot of talking points out there.
Okay, well, I think removing that end part of the
Yeah.
sentence is good, and the other board members may have more to say at the
Yeah.
next meeting. But I think that gets across what we want to get across.
No, I think that's I think more feedback from the rest of the board also would be
Yeah.
helpful. But I think that kind of.
I mean, that's, I mean, I guess from the medicinal point of view, but I mean, how do you know if it's medicinal or whatever?
Well,
For
it
that.
would matter, though.
It won't matter, but I guess, I mean, it's not a difference between that or any other
Well,
prescription.
we're not diagnosing, we're not
Correct.
saying that.
Right.
This is all about behavior. And
Correct.
this whole
Gotcha.
policy really is
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
behavior.
Right, because it's the patron code of
Yeah.
Right,
conduct.
okay, so,
okay.
moving, do you have anything else?
Well, I was gonna ask, on that part or further on this?
We're going
Yeah.
down.
Okay.
We're moving away from that.
Just
Do you
a-
have more on that one?
No, that one, question number 6 part.
6, yes.
Just a question that, where it says, property that may not be left unattended. How long does staff usually kind of wait?
It depends on when it's discovered,
Okay.
but when we see it, we kind of look around, we'll ask people.
Uh-huh.
This happens regularly,
Okay.
unfortunately, and we'll walk around the building asking, is this yours? Did you leave your handbag or whatever? So,
Does this address lost and found?
we have a lost and
Oh,
found.
okay.
We do,
Okay.
we do. But most of the time, this is about a bag, a
Sure.
backpack, something like that.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, numbers, okay, I got question number 8.
Okay.
As far as the hygiene, general standard of hygiene is expected, I 100% agree with that. The only, how is it legal to enforce?
That is something I know when we did this originally, there are some laws out there, laws, opinions
Yeah,
that conflict with what we're saying here.
I agree, because not to go on a tangent, I know there's been issues at gyms, let's just say, where, but if somebody's asked, like, hey, this member, kind of has an odor to them, they say they can't really, usually they don't want to get involved, they say there's nothing they could do, but I've also seen research like where you said there is conflicting opinions, where there is ways to do it. I know it's ticky-tack, hopefully it's not a common occurrence. I
It's
hope.
not here.
Yeah, so,
It is not.
Okay.
But again, there are some opinions out there
All
that
right.
conflict with this.
I mean, I see, I'm for this, I just know it's a real tricky, touchy issue.
Again, back to if it's a major.
Yeah, if it's something, I mean, you could tolerate it, I guess, to a point.
The struggle with
Yeah.
this one, right, is we know some patrons, because we service all different types, the attire is maybe not the more difficult
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
The hygiene, I think, is where it
Yeah,
sticks
yeah.
on it, and I mean, I think the expectation of
Yeah.
shoes and shirts and
Yeah.
pants is appropriate, but the hygiene, like, right, how do you square that, whereas if someone is transient or homeless.
And we've had that.
Yeah.
And we don't remove somebody if it's, and what are we is hygiene just odor? Is it dirt? It could be a
Yeah.
number of
Yeah.
things. So if, let's say it's dirt, and if someone's sitting at the public PCs and that's affecting not only my neighbor, but it's affecting the equipment,
Yeah.
that's a situation where we intervene. But if it's someone who's sitting on a chair and it's not affecting
Yeah.
the experiences of others,
Yeah.
we wouldn't intervene.
The difference, though, is the code of conduct doesn't state that it needs to affect others.
Well-
It just states that I need to not conform to the community or the standards of the
Yeah.
community of public. So, in theory, the impact on other patrons is not considered within the code of conduct.
Well, look at the paragraph at the beginning, right underneath patron code of conduct. It does say patrons must act in a partnership to ensure that everybody can experience a safe, clean, pleasant, and productive environment for study, research, and information and enrichment.
No, like,
So-
that is a very good
So it is kind of tying in
It
everybody,
is.
right?
I think it may, I don't have an issue with how it's written.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this is. it's
I mean,
a
I get
code
what
of
you're
conduct.
saying.
It's
I get what
not-
you're saying.
It's
Yeah, I don't want to,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm fine with
Yeah.
as it is. I think it
Yeah.
is one of those where.
It's like how, but it's fine. I'm okay. I just had a question from, past experiences other places.
Okay. Shall we move on to 10?
Sure.
Okay, that's the next update. So we've updated this to include graffiti, and then, because we just went over the signs and materials and literature, it includes signs, stickers, flyers, etc. Under there. Any questions about that? Okay. Then moving on to number 14, if there's nothing before that. There were some updates to provide more clarification to what we're talking about regarding petitioning, surveys, and collecting signatures.
And I know I've asked this question before, just to remind me, because I know it says no circulation, which I agree with all that, with the exception of library sanctioned activities. So what?
What would that be?
Yeah.
So let's say the library had a survey
Okay.
or something.
Okay. Like our community surveys and stuff like that. Okay.
Or like after a program, they have surveys.
Gotcha.
they
Yeah,
want you to fill out,
evaluations.
Evaluations, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, so that, and then the only other update we made was under 16, it's just, again, more clarification regarding commercial video or photography. Because using the word promotional, it could be, a kid promoting his school project. We don't want that. We want it commercial.
Someone's
So,
making money,
Yeah,
basically.
they're making money off of whatever they're doing here, so. And that's it for the code of conduct.
Does anyone have anything else for that? Do we feel comfortable advancing this to the board meeting next Wednesday on November 15th? As is, or do we want to discuss something further? Trustee Duffy, you look like you're thinking.
I'm just thinking, but I like it. I think it's.
I mean, and
Sounds
clearly we'll
good.
discuss it again next Wednesday with the
Yeah.
full
Yeah.
board. So
Yeah.
you're all comfortable moving it forward to the,
Yep.
okay?
We already have just an FYI, we have a code of conduct, it is as is, it's out there now.
Right.
So we're just updating
It just
it, but if we
update,
want
yeah.
to.
It was
continue to
updated
refine it.
on June 13th,
Yeah.
2018, so. Okay.
I mean, I guess I do have a question
Okay.
more, and I actually, we similar. I wonder how cities handle the hygiene and number 11 as well, especially like Chicago libraries and what they would definitely have a lot of experience with it. Not that I understand like this isn't something we deal with a lot, but I think it's fine. I just, as I thought about, like, there's other libraries that probably have a much they have more significant issues with
Yeah.
this, and how do they get around it, or do they offer hygiene little packets to help, like, that's could be something where, instead of removing the individual, but outside of that, I think this is great.
Okay. Then moving on to LLD policy 201, Board of Trustees Code of Conduct and Ethics. We're back to discussing that because we clearly have not finished yet.
Yes, this is a lot. Well, we gained some ground, so this has a lot of new edits. So all of the new edits are in red, and it has some new strikeouts, and these come from our last meeting. There was a lot of discussion, there were a lot of suggestions, especially on the censure procedures, so I did my best to incorporate those proposals. So the first edit begins with C5, because everything else seemed all right, unless we want to address anything that we didn't address last time. But under C5, we just added some commas, and then under C6, we put in that new verb. I think we're all okay with that, that's provided. And then the next edit happens in D9. And this was, we had a lot of discussion about this. We talked about using the terms intimidation or imposing activity. The on duty was removed, and item number 9 refers to any prohibited political activity, and we want to make sure to include that. So how do we like how that's worded?
I don't like the word intimidate. I don't have a suggestion. That's very forceful.
Which part?
It's
Trustees
nine.
shall not use their
Nine.
board
D9,
position to
the first.
Oh,
intimidate
gotcha.
LLC
Yeah, I was looking,
employees.
where's it at? I'm reading the thing and I can't find it.
Could it say, as an option, use their board position to influence LOD employees to conduct any activities for his or her own personal gain?
Say that again, Tom.
Basically influence, as opposed to intimidate.
Influence or suggest.
Well, I don't know if you want to put suggest.
Okay.
I mean, I think you want it somewhat
More
strong.
forceful. Okay.
Somewhat strong.
Because the impression then is that they feel like they have to do it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to get at. We don't want a board member to make a staff member feel like they have to do something, or they could lose their job, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what this is all about.
So-
It's about
So I feel
making
like
sure of
it's. I think that's why we used intimidate before, just because it was a stronger word.
Because what I was rereading when you guys were talking, that is where you made the change from activity to, or activities to activity. I'm just, is that,
that's used. I looked at it other. That's the term activity. I think it's used in a broad sense.
Okay.
It means more than one
okay.
in this sense.
Yeah, because that was what I was reading.
It could mean more than one, I should
I was rereading
say.
it a couple of times. Okay.
Is there another word you can think of, Marjorie, besides
You
intimidate?
know, working at it.
A word that pops in my head, leverage, or, I mean, I'm just trying to help Vice President Martelli out here, potential words here. I'm gonna bring my thesaurus with me, but I know there's one over here somewhere.
I mean, intimidate, I'm okay with that. Just my own personal feeling that it's forceful, but it accomplishes
Yeah,
what we're after.
yeah.
So, may be necessary.
Other words that were used were impose, leverage, intimidate. But I think at our last meeting, when I re-listened to them, I think intimidate was kind of where we were going.
yeah.
Because we want to discourage that.
Yep.
Right?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
You okay with that?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So that was D9. D10 just clarifies political or campaign-related activity, and I included the word equipment just to make sure it covers everything.
And I know somewhere, I know in the policy, somewhere else, the logo is covered. The logo is covered. And I know somewhere else.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, I don't know, should we add that to
Some-
D10 as well, or is that maybe repetitive?
I mean,
Okay.
this covers all
Okay.
political and campaign
Gotcha,
activity.
okay. So you don't think we need to add the logo? Because I know
Because you could
it's
add
somewhere
up
else,
all
okay.
It says it
of things.
I know
very
it's in-
clearly, trustees shall not
Okay,
utilize.
I knew it was in another part, so then if we needed to duplicate, that's fine. The,
Oh, yeah.
the other question then would be, should we also, where it says, using LLD funds, equipment, or supplies, should we also just say funds, equipment, supplies, or other resources, just a vague? So any like library resources? I mean, it's kind of a catch-all.
I don't know, because if you're home and you use a database, a library database, that's a resource.
Yeah, I guess, and I was trying to think about this, is this saying in this sentence that a trustee I can't go to the computer downstairs, print a flyer like any other normal patron, pay it if I have to pay or whatever, and walk out? Is that, I can't, so that, I think that was kind of, how this reads, using LLD funds, totally understand that, equipment. or supplies. So the equipment section gets in, because that's a
And there's
printer.
the computer there, and the printer
And that's
that
a
you were just talking
computer.
about.
So.
Could be the scanner.
Could be the scanner.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
I think that that's where I'm saying, and as going to that same effect, the resources, which is, well, yeah, if I want to use a database to research a topic, that's,
Right.
anyone can do that. But, I also have no solution to how to.
No, but I mean, that's what you're saying. So-
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
I was going with the equipment was I was envisioning someone using the network copier that's in the
Yeah,
staff area.
Oh.
Or in the admin office,
Sure.
grabbing a stack of paper, to use. for-
Okay.
So maybe you could say internal equipment or.
I think that right there,
Internal?
internal equipment
Okay.
is fine.
So, that's
Okay.
fine.
Or non-public equipment.
There you
or
go.
So
something
that's
like
good,
that.
non-public.
Public, okay.
And then, how about we say or if you want to go non-public resources, or it's fine if that non-public is just there. Yeah,
I think it's good to say non-public, because you're right, because then we're saying, if we don't have that in there, then it does lead you to believe that we can't use anything.
I don't want
here.
my computer to break down. I gotta-
Right, and then you're, oh, wow.
So non-public equipment,
Yeah,
yes?
I'm good with
Okay.
that.
I'm good with that.
That's fine.
All right.
Yep.
And was there more in there? Yes, we get back to our intoxicated states. Okay, we are at
There we go. No?
E9.
E9, and that was something that was recommended.
Yeah.
Because it matches with our code of conduct.
Right, the state of the.
And that's that for that area, and then we get to G, and this is where there's a lot of red, and a lot of stuff. Okay, we're under breaches, so per the committee recommendation, I inserted ramifications in the introductory paragraph. I talked about that breaches of the LLD trustee code of conduct may result in a public correction, official rebuke, or censure. So we wanted to kind of lay it out initially so people understand when a breach occurs, this is what may happen. And then struck the shall rebuke and inserted the word address. So when breaches occur, the president shall address inappropriate behavior in an open meeting. And then we get into how that's done. So a lot of the discussion at our last meeting revolved around arranging the corrections, rebukes, and censure. And this is all under that breaches of conduct. So I started with corrections and rebukes and defined each of them because I remember that members wanted that definition. And then had the ability to have that first or second step. And then we get to censure. So there was also a recommendation to define how a censure can come to be. So that definition is in there, and then A through Z provides those clarifications, and then D through J lays out the procedure for censure. So we can walk through this again. So starting from the beginning, where it says breaches, that introductory paragraph, are we okay with how that reads?
I'm sorry, are we on censure?
We're on breaches,
Oh,
the
okay.
introductory paragraph.
I'm good with it.
Okay?
Yeah,
All right, that's good. And then I broke it down to those 3 areas. Is it 3? Let me make sure I've got 2. So 2 major areas. So I put public correction and rebuke in the same. And then we defined it. A public correction is an official board statement to address misinformation, enhance understanding, and/or rectify a situation. A board rebuke is an official admonishment which may lead to censure. Do we like those definitions? I'll just move on, and we can see. Upon any breach, as soon as possible, the board president shall speak with the member who provoked a public correction/rebuke in order to dissuade any further breaches, to encourage a public apology, and to apprise the member of possible censure. And then this is where we were talking about where it goes from there. Should a breach occur without acknowledgement from the board president, another member may raise a point of order within a public meeting and/or inform the president of a breach via email to prompt a public correction and/or rebuke. Should the board president disagree with announcing a public correction and/or rebuke, a majority of a quorum may request an item to be placed on the next regular meeting agenda so to publicly admonish the breach. So let's take that in.
I'm good with it, that part.
The last 1C, admonish, maybe publicly correct the breach. Because we're talking about corrections here.
It's correction and/or rebuke, because we're saying a correction could be the board president
Yeah.
says, there's misinformation out there, I just want to address it. The rebuke, I think, is an official admonishment which may lead to censure, meaning it's regarding a trustee and/or trustees. So in this C, we're talking about a correction and/or a rebuke. So it's not just a correct, it could be that's why I use the word come up with another word regarding.
I know I've been offering, like, don't use this word, but don't have a C.
No, I was struggling with what to use, because it could be a correction, it could be a rebuke, or it could be publicly correct and/or rebuke. You know, we could do that.
You lost me there. No, okay, because you have a correction, a rebuke, a censure, right? There are three options afforded.
Yes.
The correction is the least of the degrees of option.
Yes.
This last, so one C, should the board president disagree with announcing the correction or rebuke, the majority may request this for public admonishment of the breach. Well, that means that they're actually publicly rebuking and skipping the potential of a correction.
Not necessarily.
But how it reads, because admonishment is only used as the board rebuke is an official admonishment.
There you
which
go.
may
Oh, yeah,
lead-
that's not a good word then.
Yeah, so that would be the only, so yeah, it has to probably read announcing, may request item be placed on the next regular meeting agenda.
To publicly correct and/or rebuke, maybe.
I mean, well, it gets placed on the agenda. The question is, the discussion occurs.
Yeah, is there any, would that be an action agenda item, or is it just a discussion item on the agenda? How would that
It
be?
would-
Because you're not, if you get to, like, let's say I say, I don't know, about publicly rebuking someone.
correcting.
Or correcting, and the majority, which would be 3, majority of the quorum would say we want it on the agenda item, so it's on the agenda. Obviously, there'd be a discussion.
There's no, I don't think there's an action.
Action, it's not an
Yeah,
action.
it's just
only
a
on
correction or
only
review.
censure has
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
an action item.
So I
per
mean,
se.
I think to Trustee Duffy's point is that admonish is the wrong word there. But because we're talking about either or, I think we say that a majority of a quorum may request an item to be placed on the next regular meeting agenda so to publicly correct/rebuke the breach. Because it could be either or.
I would change it to maybe be placed in the next regular meeting agenda to be discussed. It does not mean that through that discussion, there is a correction or an admonishment. It just means the acknowledgement of the disagreement between the board as to whether there should be a correction or rebuke. Because the discussion of the 3 could wind up, what if the other 4
Say no.
say no or disagree? Well, then it's not a public admonishment
Correct.
or correction. What was said
Just to get it
before
on the
stands.
agenda.
Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah.
don't need, I mean, I think what we're saying is that, oh, okay.
But because I think he's saying, and that's a, so.
But
you
there's
get-
not a
you get-
vote for a correction.
Correct, but what Trustee Duffy's saying is you could get the 3 trustees that put it on the agenda, and there would be a discussion, and those 3 presumably would be like, yeah, there should be a public correction or rebuke, but the other 4 may say, maybe not. So I think what you're trying to go at is there should be an agenda item for discussion, and I don't know if it's possible action. Like I said,
I know,
it's not an action item, a discussion, but that doesn't mean the final out. So I guess with the discussion with a possible public for a possible public rebuke.
Yeah, like you
something
say,
like
for a
that.
discussion, for a possible public correction or rebuke.
Because then it's kind of on the table up to the board. Is that, so, I mean, still might need to get cleaned up a little, but that's the genesis of it.
Would you be able to decide at that meeting, when you talk about the 3 who brought it, to the agenda.
Sure.
And the 4 that may disagree, can you leave it at that meeting as far as making a recommendation to rebuke?
But, well, I guess that
I
would,
mean, is that what we're?
because it would be, because censure is obviously more clear.
I mean, you're
That's
not
an
going-
action item, but the public correction or rebuke, so if the president didn't do it, and it had to go to the majority of the quorum to get it on the agenda item, there'd be the discussion. And obviously, if the 4 say no and 3 say yes, then it's pretty, you have the discussion, it's dead. Then after that, if there is a 4th that agrees, because it's not an action item, so how would, yeah, so it's still, but if it would still be, I would presume, the end of the road after the discussion and whatever
Right,
the
it would still be
4,
discussed and then.
so,
Okay, how's this?
go for it.
Should the board president disagree with announcing a public correction and/or rebuke, a majority of a quorum may request an item to be placed on the next regular meeting agenda to be discussed and for possible correction and rebuke.
How about for discussion and, how's that?
For discussion?
Unless you don't, I mean.
That's okay.
'Cause I look at it as like, let's say discussion happens, and, oh, hey, now 4 people agree there should be a correction, but the president, disagrees. Well, at that point, in some ways, that is the public correction now. There is the majority of the
Correct.
board has now made a public correction.
Correct.
It just isn't done through the president. But if there isn't a majority, just through that action, right, that isn't a public correction. You still have that discussion, so it's transparent, but through the mechanisms that are allowed for us to make public statements or public actions, at least you get that for. It wouldn't be like a vote, but.
Well, and just for clarification, A and B is, the president is doing it, right? And the president in A, it's just the president can say, oh, hey, that was a breach, or that needs to be corrected, or that needs to be rebuked. The president makes that decision on his or her own.
Yeah.
And then in B, it's one board member contacts the president and says, I think this should happen, and the board president can say, yes, okay, and then does it, or says, no, I don't agree. And then it would go to the C, where then you would need at least 3
Yeah.
in order to get it discussed at the full board.
Right.
For all we know, too, the public correction might need to be, or a rebuke might not be on the board president, too, so it's another reason you need the item C, too. so,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
it allows some empowerment
Yeah.
of the
Regular trustees,
trustees,
yeah.
but it
Right.
also protects, because what I don't want to have happen is 3 trustees think there's a breach, or think there should be a public correction, and in theory, use it, unfortunately, in an incorrect way.
Correct.
To have that discussion and to make it seem like but having that discussion is one thing, but as long as it's not public, it doesn't become the minutes of the public record. I guess that's another question, is
Yeah.
how would this be
Well,
documented?
I was thinking about that, too, because as long as there's always a camera, because we've not always had, this camera's relatively new, it's only about 2 years we've been doing that, so, and minutes have been inconsistent over the years, too. I mean, there's been some really, like, right now, we got pretty good minutes. In the past, it's been probably
Yeah.
even more, there's been some, it's like, you can't even tell what the heck happened at the meeting, so.
Well, this is not for statute, this is.
No, correct.
Minutes.
But I think I agree with trustee Duffy, because I was actually kind of thinking the same thing. You want to have some type of documentation, at least of that discussion,
Well, we do.
because the minutes are fine now, but I guess where I'm coming from is, in past years, sometimes the minutes have been a little thin, and there wasn't even it wasn't recorded, even though you're right, these are statute, that's not statute, but there's, he's talking about, well, the discussion and outcome should be reflected in the minutes. Does that sound?
I mean,
Yeah.
everything is reflected in the minutes.
Right now, our minutes are good, our minutes are good right now, but I'm saying in previous years, over the years, sometimes the minutes have been a little thin, and not just our board, there are other boards that.
I
Put the
hear where you're going. I don't
yeah.
know if it belongs here or if it
Okay.
belongs in the general bylaws. Because
Okay.
I mean, to that point, it's not just
Yeah.
about breaches that we
Right.
want in the minutes.
For the minutes,
Yeah.
Right, you want
Yeah.
proper minutes
No, I
that
get it.
reflect
And I think we could,
statements.
we could approve, we could change those each time we approve it.
Of course.
But I do agree, in my head, I would envision something like, as the summary of that be like, after much discussion, the board decided
Not
that
to.
no public correction or rebuke was required, or vice versa, right? Like that, as long as that kind of summarizes that section, then that's what you
Yeah.
kind of look for.
And another thing I don't know, we might want to add or not add, depending, because actually that's where I thought you were going at first. Like, make sure it's appropriate. Should we add something like, any public rebukes or public correction or rebuke should not be done for political purposes? Because there could be some other boards out there that there could be some, fighting right now, and maybe people, like 3 trustees might say, well, we got a public rebuke, somebody else, or vice versa, or the 4 could gang up on another one, It's not a problem here, it could be a problem at other boards. I might be making too much of
What
an
are you
issue.
talking about?
I don't know, I'm
Other
taking-
board
I'm
members?
Oh, that's where I'm going, should we add like one thing, any public rebuke or correction should not be done for political purposes? Or is that, we don't have to.
I don't think
Yeah,
I don't
see a problem?
No,
Okay.
because, we're talking about.
Gotcha.
Board,
Okay.
you look at the very beginning, board members are expected to act responsibly
Okay.
and hold themselves to the
That's
highest
fine.
ethical standards.
Gotcha.
So,
That's fine.
right there.
Okay.
Right?
I'm cool with it.
I agree, and this is about the code of conduct.
Yeah.
So.
Either it happened or it didn't.
Yeah, either it happened or it
That's fine.
didn't, and if there is a gray area, then
That's what the,
That's-
all the board's just gonna have to work through it, right? We're just gonna have to, maybe have to debate it a little bit, but that'll be okay.
That's fine.
So, okay, I need to know for
Okay.
the next. So should the board president disagree with announcing a public correction / rebuke, a majority of a quorum may request an item to be placed on the next regular meeting agenda for discussion and possible correction / rebuke, or just for discussion?
I think the way you read it, I think is okay. I don't-
For discussion and
possible
possible.
correction / rebuke.
Yep.
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right.
There we go.
Here we go, to censure. All right, censure, any violation, and this was asked to be put in there to talk about how you get there, but any violation of the LLD trustee code of conduct, dereliction of duty, conflict of interest, or inappropriate behavior may result in a resolution of censure as drafted and adopted by the board. A resolution of censure is an official condemnation and reprimand of a trustee by the board, and,
Okay, question.
yes.
It says is official, but when you just read it out loud, you said is an official. So do you want the an in there? Because when you said it,
tell
you
me.
said it.
You tell me. Yes, is and. Isn't that make more sense?
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go to
The clean.
the clean, because this is hard to read for me. Okay, so. And so, a resolution of censure is an official condemnation and reprimand of a trustee by the board, and must be approved by a majority of board members in an open meeting, is enacted with the hope to deter and reform unethical behavior, does not remove a member from the board, nor does it hinder the ability to attend meetings, make motions, or vote. Then it goes into the procedure for a resolution of censure, right?
Resolution, yeah.
Okay. A member may call for a formal censure in open meeting or via email to the board president, copying the director. A majority of a quorum is required to draft a resolution of censure. Trustees shall individually email the president and director with the censure request and list the charges. Upon receipt of 3 trustee requests to draft a resolution of censure, the director shall inform the entire board of such a request via email by the end of the next business day. That was asked to be put in there. The director shall consult with the board president in drafting the resolution. The drafted resolution of censure shall be on the agenda of the next regularly scheduled board meeting. In special cases, the censure may compel an executive session hearing, or the president may call a special meeting dependent on the severity of the breach. And then lastly, the resolution of censure agenda item allows for discussion, amendment, and allows the subject to respond to the charges before the votes are cast. And then lastly, persistent and or flagrant breaches or multiple censures may result in the board invoking legal consultation and seeking a court injunction. All right, let's tackle this.
Well, I like that it is spelling out how everyone will be made aware and, and especially adding in that 2G, and that it has the timeline. So the entire board will be informed by the end of the next business day, which is nice because the last time that we did deal with this,
We didn't have a procedure.
we had no procedure, and then some people were completely caught off guard when they opened up their email and saw the agenda for the next meeting and saw it in there. And so to make sure that everyone is aware of what is going on, I think that is really important to include that in there.
I had one very minor change. The last letter, the resolution of censure, and allows the subject, can we just say allows the member or board member to respond to the charges before votes are cast?
Yeah, where are we?
J.
And
No, so I'm looking
It's
at the,
and
It's J, the subject of
Oh,
the
I see.
censure.
Allows the member, yes.
yeah, the subject, that's the first time it's just appear as a subject versus it's consistent with members
Do we have
used.
Hold on, where is it?
I think I use subject because it's subject of the censure.
It's the subject of the censure. Well, no, so I'm just looking back to see, like, where have we,
Subject I don't think is used anywhere else.
right, but there's the member there.
We use the
And
term
2C.
member, we do.
I was looking to see, but then it's a member may call for a formal censure, that's
Yeah.
a different member.
Yeah. I mean, I think I use subject because I'm like,
The subject of the censure.
subject of the
So-
censure, but like, do we want to use, I don't want to use accused member or,
No,
No, but the,
so you're saying maybe change subject to board member?
Yeah.
Is that, are we okay? I mean, 'cause that's who we're talking about, so I mean, is it
Right.
either or? I mean, I'm okay how it
Because you're
is.
talking about the charges, so.
Yeah,
oh, right.
So
Yeah, the qualifiers there for the,
who this is about.
yeah.
Who the member is
subject
that we're talking about?
Yeah,
The subject.
yeah, I know, as
The
I said that, I was
subject,
like,
right,
oh,
the
man.
subject of the censure.
We can use,
English teachers
member is
really,
fine,
yeah.
but because there is something there that describes who we're talking about.
And
We like
the
member?
member to respond to the charges. I don't know, I kind of like subject of the censure.
That's fine. The defendant, no,
The
just kidding.
No, but like respondent, but then respond is
I
there.
think, I mean, as long as it's said.
You know,
Subjects.
I'm fine
Yeah,
with subject
yeah,
too.
yeah.
I think if that's probably the best word to use.
I just feel like it's clearer that way.
You know what, I pull back my,
Discussion.
You rescind your.
rescind, yeah, but not twice tonight.
No, but you know what, that's good, because that's the whole point, we get to discuss and see how it sounds, and, you know, that's
Yep.
the point of this.
Exactly.
Who verifies the
Vice
charge?
President Bartelli, do you
Who
have?
verifies the charges? I mean, what if you, in your estimation, something is an infraction? I mean, how do we go about that?
So you're saying like with F, when they say,
Well, charges.
they list the charges, so you're saying who
They-
verifies
yeah,
those
I mean-
charges?
So like if it goes to a censure, there's like a list of 10 things, let's say.
Right.
You, well,
Well,
Yeah,
so let's just say there's a list of 10 things, just to.
Arbitrary.
Arbitrary number. So I would assume in the discussion, and when in the agenda, when we discuss it and make a motion to either approve the censure, you could always amend to say, okay, take out.
well,
item
what
7
I'm
and 10.
recalling is in the instance of a
Censure.
former censure, there were several.
Yeah,
I don't
that's what I
know,
just-
there were several.
Yeah,
I think, and I explained before that I had difficulty with one out of that. So I could have voted for the censure. But I don't know exactly who determined those items. I believe it was the board president at the time, which is, I'm
Well,
not saying
there's-
that's not
well, there's a
appropriate.
couple- So there's the couple vehicles to get to, if it gets to a censure, how, whether it's the majority of the quorum or board president.
Mm-hmm,
And then it'd pretty much be like any agenda item, where, I mean, if there's a list of 10 or several, I mean, I guess in the discussion, trustees can make a amended motion to say, take,
I don't know that there was an opportunity to do that. I think we were asked to vote as they were presented.
Back then.
Yeah,
for
Yeah,
sure.
because we
Yeah,
did not have the
no,
procedure.
okay,
answer-
so I'm trying to
Yeah,
avoid.
To answer
that
your
happening.
question, I think what you're asking is, who determines what the charges are?
Yes, exactly.
And what could those charges be? I think we look back to this policy because we look at the code. So it could be a breach of using the logo, which is under B2. It could be a breach regarding certain decorum, such as,
Hindering the meeting from actually taking place. Or
yeah, something like that. It could be a breach in.
I understand those items. I guess, under 2 censure, procedure for resolution of censure,
Okay.
item F. I'm struggling with trustees shall individually email the president director with the censure request and list the charges.
Okay.
So I, as a trustee, am presenting my charge, what
Yes.
charge is. What I may think is a charge may not necessarily be one. True. So does this cover who determines?
If they get put on
Basically the
it.
same question I just
it would
asked,
be
but,
probably the majority, either the board president or majority of quorum,
Okay.
how it's at least originated. Again, it could probably be changed in the course of discussion or amended motions.
Well, this says that the majority of a quorum is required to draft a resolution of a censure. So the board
Correct.
president can't do it on his or her own.
Okay.
It says,
well then, though, what is contained
so
in
how
the
does it get onto
censure?
it? Well, and maybe that's why then J has the resolution of censure agenda item allows for discussion amendment and allows the senators to respond to the charge before votes are cast, so that we could discuss and amend. So like, let's say you had like 5 things that
Sure.
you wanted to do, trustee Duffy had 7, I had 3, and we didn't necessarily agree on what they were, but let's say we had like 2 in common, and so they all got on there, and then we would discuss, I would assume in an open meeting, to determine what would make the most sense.
Yeah.
As opposed to just it going to the president, and the president saying, well, no, like Vice President Bartelli said this, but I feel like if it was in writing, right, to the president, then it should be, those charges that you listed should be on there.
So it would be like 15? Now we're up to 15.
Well, no, but I
Just
mean,
the
if there
2.
were things in
Oh, so you're saying start with the 2 and then
if things
you
were
get
in
in?
common, but then the other ones should be listed out too, if we're documenting it.
Sure.
Right? And if we're saying, okay, these are the things, and then when it comes to the discussion time, then we can say, okay, well, I don't think this one should be, and see how everyone feels about different,
So,
Points,
like I
different
said, there was,
charges.
so if there's like 2, it's agreement in the 3 trustees, it would start with the 2, or it would?
I was just giving that as an example.
Exactly, so,
but like, think about, so when we did do this before, I remember being at the meeting and one of the trustees saying that there was a charge that he wanted to have been on the censure, but it wasn't on the censure, and made that comment. And so I don't know if that would have been better served to have been on it originally and then have the discussion and then maybe be amended and then removed, as opposed to it being mentioned later, well, there was another one that I wanted to be on there but didn't get on there. I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
I
it's
gotta think about that.
it's hard. I mean,
It
it's
Well, especially
hard.
now with the majority of a quorum, because I think then you gotta starting to be careful about too, is OMA violation then, because you're allowed to, like 3 trustees could talk to get an agenda item on the agenda, but you're not really supposed to talk in
About
detail,
it.
About it.
it, because that's an OMA violation.
So I could say, hey,
So-
Tom, I want to get a censure resolution on the agenda. Hey, Marjorie, I'm going to get one on. And then, and then we
Yeah.
all say it, but then we send our
But
own
then,
charges.
but then it would be, then you start emailing the board president, and so I do have to, I guess, how
I
would
think
we
what,
do that?
I mean, so my approach
Yeah.
would be is, you collect all of the quote-unquote list of charges. And unless, and maybe that we need to put on here, unless all duplicates are combined or some language, yeah, similar or combined, but nothing is removed. And then when it comes to time for the discussion on the resolution, that's when you cross out, that's when the discussion of each one of those needs to go through and you talk about it. And then whatever is amended, that is your formal resolution. You know, because, yeah, you're right, because Vice President Martelli brings up a good point. Who is actually discerning
Right.
this? Who, and maybe the best approach is you should not discern. If there is enough, that's not the role at that point. The role is to collect just the information, bring it to the board, and then as a collective, go through it.
And look at G. So under F, we're talking about trustees shall individually email the president and director with the censure request and list the charges. And then G says, upon receipt of 3 trustee requests to draft a resolution of censure, the director shall inform the entire board of such a request via email by the end of the next business day. My question there is, am I informing, or is the director informing the board of the fact that there's a resolution in
And not what the specific charges are?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. I
Yeah.
would like the information
so
beforehand,
The
not
director
just the
sh-
fact that there's going to be a censure.
So the director shall inform the entire board of such a request, so, of such charges? Of such, or,
How about of censure request and list of charges? I mean, it kind of just goes up to whatever.
Because they're,
is above.
and the only thing, I agree, the only question I have is, there might be already known there's gonna be a resolution for censure, but you might not know all. It might still be a work in progress of what's everything, that might be starting to split hairs a little bit, but.
Well, it doesn't
But I-
give
Yeah.
a timeline for how long we have to give the list of charges after there's been a request that may. need to
Well,
be
so
added.
that's the point, though, I think, is that Tatiana was making, was that we have to, three trustees email the president and the director with the request and list the charges, and then upon receipt of 3 trustee requests, the director has to send an email within the next business day, by the end of the next business day. So there does have to be, I mean, if you're emailing and saying, okay, I think there needs to be, I'm requesting that there's a resolution of censure on so-and-so, these are my charges,
I have to wait until the third person sends me.
Sure.
and
Oh, yeah.
then by the end of the following business day, she has to send that out.
Yeah.
It would
But
just be with the list of.
But I like what you said, that there's a request for resolution, and here are the lists of charges. Just in list form.
It's just fact-based,
Yeah.
right? Like you're not doing anything else outside of, now the board is aware of the 2 most important facts.
Right.
Or pieces of facts.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
And then we wait until,
You're right, because, and then if, let's say 3 people request it, but let's say that there's 2 more or 3 more that are like, yeah, you know what, I really think that we should do this too, but they just didn't email the board president and the director, and then they read through it, they say, oh, I totally agree with this,
And again, the director consults with the board president in drafting the resolution, so it's just like any other draft language, and then it comes to the board, and then there's more
there's
discussion.
discussion
There could
and
be
amendment.
amendment, yeah.
yeah.
I think that's good. So then in G, do you want to add in
Censure request and list of charges.
and list of charges?
Yes. Inform the entire board of the censure request and list of charges.
Okay.
Well, let's say, like
The
with that,
censure
there's like a
request.
list of 15, now we're up to 15.
And
So maybe
This is a
between
good board
the-
member.
what are you talking about? Charge, 15 charges?
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, let's say between the 3 trustees, there's like a list of 15.
Okay.
5 different things?
Okay.
Yeah, 5 others, so
Okay.
could you still add more charges at the meet? I mean, I guess I'm going
I'm
from.
sure.
I
To
think,
me, you
Or
could,
could you take
amendment.
out,
Yeah.
or even, let's say you take out 10 of them, but you add a 6th.
To me, yes, because that's part of amendment,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
after the trigger is the 3,
Yeah.
and then you
Right.
have to do what you have at
Okay.
that point. If anything changes after that or at the meeting, that's still okay, because it's at least transparent.
Yeah, and then you do your board business in the open meeting.
Thoughts?
Yeah.
I like, thank
Yeah.
you, Tatiana. This
No,
probably
it's
was
a
a very
tough one.
convoluted thing to write.
Did a great job.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Very
Okay,
good.
so do we feel like this is ready to go to the next board meeting next Wednesday?
I think it is. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff, I always feel like we're getting something on, especially when it gets this meaty. But I think it's ready to go. I mean, we can always bring it back if we have to.
We
add
could, we
something.
can't, yeah, if we're not
So-
ready to vote on it
No,
at
no, I
the
mean,
next
what-
meeting, we
but-
certainly.
No, I think we're ready to vote on it, but I'm just saying, like, there might be something.
Right,
oh,
so
like,
if there
oh,
were no's.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this, if I'm saying it's ready
Okay.
to vote on, I'm happy with that. But in the event at the board meeting, there are objections. How exactly, what's the process in handling that? Would you as committee chair and you as president ask for a vote if there's, or would we take it back? Let's just say,
So-
I'm just not, maybe one trustee has an issue.
So to me, if one trustee votes no
Mm-hmm.
and 6 vote yes, then it passes,
And I
right?
think it's
Okay.
like any policy.
It's like any policy.
All right.
But let's say 4 vote no and 3 vote yes.
I understand.
Then we will bring it back to our next committee
Here's-
meeting
here's
Okay.
and address it.
another
Unless
point
we
is-
can amend it.
Well, things have to be voted on, I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
and we can't do
And if
that.
someone
Right.
brings up a real, I mean, not necessarily on this particular policy, but for any policy, if someone brings up something that's just, we've completely not addressed, that should be in a policy, we could bring it back to the
Sure.
personnel policy
Right.
committee.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, we didn't even explore that avenue.
There's
Great.
so we could amend, it could be amended, the policy, or it could be, we could just give, the board could give direction to send it back to the
Committee.
committee, and we
Right.
could discuss in an
Okay.
upcoming meeting. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen. So, I mean, yeah, it'll probably get kicked around a little bit, I'm sure, next week, or who knows, maybe it will or won't.
Yeah.
But I think it will probably pass in some, whether it's amended or not, I don't know, but, yeah, it should, we got ways to do that, so.
Okay,
Okay, good.
but let's move along to our last policy for the
Okay.
evening,
Okay.
policy 705, construction, capital improvements, and contractual services.
Okay, so this is our existing policy. Treasurer Norton recommended looking at this policy again, and I think that's why trustee Swisak asked us to put this on. And particularly looking at B7. In this policy, I made bold the policy statements that I think reflected her concerns, and that was about the word emergency. So I also included the Illinois statute in our packet, and then there's a copy of the statute in easier font to read, and I also bolded those areas there. And those things reference where bids are not required. And actually, the statute is much more flexible than I think our policy is. There's a lot more leniency there. So I'm not sure we need a more defined statement, but I did provide one here in blue, just to show an example of what one might look like. What I did do with the policy, though, is I reorganized it. So I do recommend reorganizing our policy in this manner in the A and B. I think it's much more clear. We've got formal bids required, and we've got formal bids not required, and it's just clearer. But I think what Treasurer Norton wanted us to look at was, again, B7, in emergencies when an immediate repairs or replacement of equipment owned by the library is necessary in order to permit the library to properly function, or where there has been a local disaster or catastrophe, that's when bids are not required. And then the statute just allows for a majority of the board to declare an emergency and move forward with an emergency expense. It does list out other things there regarding non-bid situations. But I put in a sentence, I didn't know where to go. I re-listened to it, so I didn't know where to go. So I put in, the board shall consider the following in emergencies: repeated failures, dangers or hazards, time frame and phasing for repair and replacement, and overall facility operations. Again, I don't know if that's a necessary sentence. It's up to you guys to talk about.
I'm having difficulty with the word shall. If you look at the statute, and it uses the word shall under B, the board shall, and shall's used quite a bit. If Illinois, by a legal description, must is the only word that imposes a legal obligation that something is mandatory. Okay, so even reference books say that the word shall appears in statutes, it means may. So I would like to see something to the effect of formal bidding may not be required by the board in emergencies, including. In other words, what happened with the committee as far as allowing the air handlers. If we're saying in our policy that we have, we need to abide by the 25,000, and they're using the word shall really isn't.
Strong enough, you're saying?
It's not really mandatory. I mean, so the fact that the committee recommended the air handler repair and it was over 25,000 would be appropriate. And it appeared to me that there was some exception that we didn't follow procedure. And that troubles me because I certainly, as chair of that committee, don't want to be viewed as,
Right.
we usurped a policy.
I don't think we did, but
Okay.
I mean, there are these 10 caveats to describe,
Right.
so it's not a
and again, I
must.
think the
That's why it's
statute
a
is
shall,
much more
I guess.
flexible than our particular policy. Our policy
Right.
is a little more strict.
Right.
It was, I mean, it was a tricky issue, what we had before us. I mean, I get it, and we don't want to be in that position.
Right.
Hopefully never again. And I knock on wood, I don't think there's anything on the horizon unless it's truly it's like something pops up, like an unquestionable emergency. So I think, since that one, I think we're out of the woods. But I think I know what you're saying. I mean, it's not I don't think anybody, that was not a perfect scenario that we were in, but we had to do what we had to do.
Well, let's focus on the policy.
Sure,
And the
gotcha.
wording, as it is written without the blue statement, we followed policy, in my opinion. Because it affected then we needed necessary repairs and or replacement of equipment in order to function.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, this is good, but maybe to tighten it, because I think what triggered what we wound up doing is because we got like a professional opinion that said it was in, what was the term you used,
Urgent.
critical?
Urgent.
Okay. So I don't know if we want to if we want to keep this in the blue portion, do we want to add or modify this to have something, or we would kind of completely rewrite this where it's basically like a professional opinion? I mean, it was old. I mean,
Professional
yeah.
recommendations,
Either-
maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, I guess there's ways that, somebody could read that, and that opens it up to more liberal interpretation.
Well, the statute
Is
is
more
very liberal.
Right.
Is it? Okay.
Well, I feel like trustee, or Treasurer Norton's issue was that it said emergencies and
Not urgent.
not urgent, and the recommendation from Jack Hayes was that it was urgent. And so she felt like we
So
didn't
maybe
follow.
just the word
it
urgent is.
Because it was emergency.
Well, and I remember, I know I voted for it, but I remember I had a long pause. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know if this, because I also agree with Treasurer Norton. Urgent and emergency are two different things. Now, I think I like the addition of the professional opinion to make sure that it's okay, we need to know, this is not just urgent, this is an emergency, this is now, right now needs to happen, so that we can go forward with that. And I think that that was probably, that lack of clarity from Jack, not that he intended it, was what led to kind of that conversation of, well, it wasn't that we usurped anything, we did follow policy, but, you know, I remember the timeline he gave wasn't necessarily what you would see sometimes in an emergency, but timelines are relative to what you're doing, so there is that part, and that's why the professional, I think.
Right, well, and the issue that we had too is because it was the air handlers and going into winter, and, you know, I mean, if it had happened in the spring, or if it was, well, spring, then we could have dealt with air conditioning, but you know what I mean, but regardless, because of seasonally where we live, that it could affect down the road, and if it did go kaput, then we would have to do it
And
right
the other
then.
issue too with that specific thing is, because it was so old, the parts were becoming a little bit more scarce too, like more difficult to find, if I recall. So,
So,
I mean, I just don't want like a professional opinion to kind of open up the door, like, okay, you could do this. You know, obviously following best practices, going through the process is the perfect way, but I don't want to unintentionally add language that kind of opens up the door to say, okay, well, now we got a consultant, expert or consultant
Right.
that said, oh, you know, we got to do, I mean, it could still be, needs attention soon, but you might be able to still go through the proper process.
Well, again, the board would make that decision.
No, I agree.
It
I
wouldn't
guess,
be, you know,
I'm
the board
looking at,
would vote on this.
I'm always, when I try,
Right.
I'm looking at future boards, like none of us are gonna be, like, how many years down the road, none of us are here.
I want those 10 code of conduct
Ten
violations.
code, yeah, that was 10.
Oh, it went to 15.
Exactly, 15,
The
yeah.
10 so I mean, you know, I mean, obviously this can always change, but let's say like in 12 years, none of us are here or whatever, it's, okay, all right. 20 years? I don't know. So anyhow, I just wanted, so like another board doesn't.
then they could just come in and.
They could
edit
just-
the policy themselves.
But then they gotta edit the policy, so I don't know, I mean, it is.
I like the professional opinions because I think that does respond
Because that
to
triggered it.
Treasurer Norton's conflict with the language. And I think that's what it was, because she did state that she was happy that we were following through, but it just conflicted with what she thought was a huge conflict between those two words.
Right.
And professional would more than likely be, and
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with the future, but it's like ComEd or someone like
Yeah.
saying, listen, this has to be done right now type
Yeah.
deal. And
Yeah.
I mean, and I agree. I think that,
Yeah.
and let's say we had that language and we applied it to Jack's comments, the step would have been then to just go back to Jack and ask him, you know, is it an emergency? Like, this is what we have in our policy, you know,
Yeah.
does this apply? And then we get that professional opinion, and then it would have worked fine.
So where are you suggesting putting in professional
In the
opinion?
blue?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to
Okay.
be, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm okay with keeping what's left also in the blue, but probably adding the professional opinion. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I'm fine with it. We're,
Yeah. Does that sound right? I mean, we could eyeball this again if we, whenever, either Wednesday or whenever we look.
Did we say professional opinion or professional recommendation? Opinion?
Opinions?
I would like recommend.
My
Recommendation?
recommendation.
That's what I had first.
Okay.
Okay. Other things with this policy? Anyone else?
Just, you didn't change, just reorganize.
That's
That's it.
reorganized, yeah.
No other changes.
So then are we comfortable bringing this one to the board
Yeah,
meeting
let's
next
do it.
Wednesday as
Yeah.
well?
So really,
We're gonna be so busy.
So the only thing that really changes, you're reorganizing and we're just the blue part, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Are we
I mean,
good?
and that, so if there needs any
Bring it.
modifying, that will be quick.
We'll
That's all.
discuss it.
I think providing the
Statute?
statute in the board packet will be helpful too. That was really
Will do.
Okay.
That helped a lot.
So we're in agreement that we will bring all of these drafts to the board meeting next Wednesday on November 13th, 2019?
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything else that anyone needed to discuss before we adjourn?
It was the one big tree branch, the only one that was down? From
There
my-
was a smaller one that was at the Front Street exit there that they took care of the same day.
Okay, perfect.
That's the one in the south parking lot.
It was big.
I
That's
walked out of the library and I was like, whoa, this branch was not here when I got here.
Yeah.
Okay, then do we have a motion to adjourn?
I moved to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 7:25 PM.